Your next section has you analyzing whether something is able to be testable as a scientific hypothesis. So actually this is a good section to point out those sneaky questions that you guys might miss. They're bolded usually in your laboratory. There's one sneaky question. I want you to propose a testable hypothesis for human behavior during a full moon, because in that paragraph I'm giving you an example of a hypothesis that isn't a true hypothesis. It's not belonging to scientific inquiry. So you're going to propose a testable hypothesis. Don't miss those sneaky questions. But I do want to do the next problem with you guys. So which of the following would be useful, testable as a scientific hypothesis? It's very similar to you guys defining a problem. So you are going to determine whether or not these scenarios are testable. Remember or recall in lecture that scientific hypotheses must be testable, falsifiable is another way to say that. And what I mean by that, what I mean by those two things, they belong together, is can you prove something false? Remember that we use the null hypothesis in order to convey our results in science, in order to communicate and to prove that something is false is a lot more useful statistically. Yeah, so I want to do this problem with you guys. Penicillin causes bacteria to die. Okay, so we're going to consider a few things in these scenarios. First, we're going to consider, is it a testable scientific hypothesis? If it is testable, we're going to state how you would test it, and we're going to state a null hypothesis. That's if it is testable. That's if we say yes, this is a testable scientific problem. If it's not testable, just explain why, like you did in previous scenarios for me. Explain why you can't test it. Okay, so let's do this one. Penicillin causes bacteria to die. Penicillin is an antibiotic, and I'm saying that it causes bacteria to die. Let's see, because you're going to do this in a future scenario. Let's define some groups here. It looks like I'm analyzing the antibiotic penicillin, and I'm analyzing bacteria. In fact, I'm saying that it has a killing effect on bacteria. Those are my two groups. You can definitely test this scientifically. You can analyze it, you can gather that data, you can prove that false. You can definitely prove that false in a lab and decide whether or not that antibiotic, penicillin in particular here, is going to cause bacteria to die. You can even get more specific, and we usually do, and consider what specifically, what kind of bacteria, what species you're talking about. But this is definitely a testable scientific hypothesis. So, since it is a testable scientific hypothesis, I'm going to go ahead and state how you would test it. So, you guys will be doing some Google research on your own. Make sure to use credible sources, or you might be able to decide how you would test this. So, I'd basically treat bacteria with penicillin. You don't have to do, you don't have to be too specific, elegant with your answer. You can be more general with me in this section. I'm not, determining whether or not you have microbiology background and understanding how that treatment process works. But yeah, treat bacteria with penicillin and then go ahead and see if bacteria dies or not. That's how I would test it. Okay. State a null hypothesis is my next step. So the null hypothesis, it really helps to determine the two groups. I've already highlighted them in yellow, penicillin and bacteria. Remember that the null hypothesis says that there's no relationship between those two groups. So I'm going to go ahead and use the phrase that I've used before. Penicillin does not cause bacteria to die. Notice that I kept that statement very similar to what you saw previously. I've just added that phrase, does not. There is no relationship between penicillin and bacteria death. You can describe this, your null hypothesis, in different ways.